15 through 37. Okay. Yeah. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now, Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would have not died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God who is to come into the world. After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and is asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. Jesus wept. When the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he open the eyes of the blind man, have kept this man from dying? May God bless us all in the reading of his word.
Thanks, Christian, and good morning, everybody. Good morning. Nice to see you all today. Summer is here. It's exciting. You might be able to see I got a bit of sun last weekend, and for many of us, this is kind of the time that we look forward to, I don't know, all year. At least for me it is. And you're probably going to hear this at some point. Either you're going to say it or someone around you will say it at some point this summer. This is the life. You know, have you hear that, right? We hear it all the time, but what does it mean? And we might say it, or we might hear someone say it when we feel like this is what life is supposed to be like, right? Like we're experiencing something, we're enjoying something, we're feeling fulfilled. Maybe there's like an inner sense of peace, and we just say, you know, this is the life. The last time I felt this feeling was about a week ago. Alicia and I, we recently went on a backcountry canoe trip with two of our nephews. We went to a remote lake just north of Kenora, and it was an amazing experience. You know, the first night we got there, we were setting up on this island we were staying on, and the sun was setting. I got a picture of it here. The sun was setting. You know, the view is just spectacular. The water's like glass, beautiful trees, birds chirping, gentle breeze. The kids are there fishing. They're soaking it up. And it was just a moment, you know, a moment that's full of life, you know. And there's this sort of energy in that moment. And it's just like time just slows down for a minute. And you realize in times like this that you're experiencing something that's just very good. And I don't mean good in like sort of the cheap, shallow sense that we often use, like maybe we hit a green light on the way to work, oh, that's good, you know, not like that. I'm talking about good in a much deeper sense. It's not the sense of something, you know, that works out nicely for me by my standards of what is good. Rather, it's a sense that you've become caught up in something that's larger than you, and that it's just undeniably good, not merely because you think it's good, but because it's just absolutely good. You've found a moment where you get to experience life as it should be. You know, this is the life, we might say. And maybe for you it's different, right? Maybe you're not into fishing and the sunset. But we might experience this phenomena in many different ways. Maybe it's a sunset over the ocean, or maybe it's staring up into the Milky Way on a clear night. Maybe it's listening to a beautiful song and like losing yourself in the melody, or maybe it's holding a newborn baby. Maybe it's being with your family. Maybe it's a life-giving conversation with an old friend. Or maybe it's like a deeply satisfying meal with good food and good drink and good people. Or maybe it's being involved in a supportive community who's there for you when you need it. Or maybe it's watching someone joyfully serving the people around them and sacrificing themselves for the benefit of others. Or maybe it's like that feeling you get at the long day, at the end of a long day, and when you're resting after your labors. I think all of these things are sort of pointing us in the same direction. We find ourselves connecting with something bigger than ourselves. We find ourselves having this sense or this feeling of being a part of life as it should be. And I want us to consider this very important idea today in what we read about and what we find in John chapter 11, when Jesus raises this man named Lazarus from the dead. And in the course of the story, Jesus says something that should really cause us to stop in our tracks, I think. When he's talking to Lazarus' sister, Martha, he makes this claim. He makes this claim that he is life. He is life. And we need to stop and realize what Jesus is saying here. It's not like going back to the list. It's not like he's saying that he deserves to be kind of added to this list of things that's really good about life. It's not that. I think what he's saying is that all of these experiences here, or all of these experiences where we feel like this is what life should be, all of those things that are undeniably good, he is saying that he is the source of that. He's the source of life itself. He is the source of all goodness. He is the source of life, and he is filling us with life all the time. And it's one thing to say that, but then Jesus proves his claim by taking a man who is literally dead in a tomb and filling him with life, with new life. It's remarkable. It's a remarkable lesson because it tells us that Jesus is life. And when we connect ourselves to him, we're connecting ourselves to the one who will give us life as well. And so today, I want to start off by recapping the story. I wish we had time to read the entire chapter. But I hope you'll do that on your own. But I want to quickly recap the story together, and then we can consider the message in the story, and then finally I want to look at the reactions of the people in the story. And I want to ask ourselves, how are we going to react as well? So we'll quickly recap this thing. We need to consider what's happening here. So the people in the story are Jesus, obviously, and then there's the three siblings kind of in order of appearance. We've got Martha, we've got Mary, and then we've got Lazarus. And this all happened, it started out in the north there. It says across the Jordan in the previous chapter in verse 40. And it says it started there, but then Jesus moved down near Jerusalem to this place called Bethany, where the siblings live, where Martha and Mary and Lazarus lived. And that's where the rest of the story took place. It's just 2 miles outside of Jerusalem. So Jesus is up in the north there, and he finds out that his friend Lazarus is sick, like really sick. And this is what it says. It says, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, and so he went there right away and fixed them up. That's not what it says, right? It says he loved them, so when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. You might have expected it to say that he went immediately, but he waited for 2 days. And then he says this after the 2 days to his disciples in verse 11. He says, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up. And his disciples replied, Lord, if he's sleeping, he'll get better. And Jesus had been speaking of his death, but the disciples thought that he meant natural sleep. And so he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I am glad that I was not there so that you may believe. let us go to him. So Jesus' words here, they kind of set up the tone, or a foreshadowing sort of thing for the rest of the story. We can see something incredible is about to happen. From death, new life is going to spring up. And that's sort of the theme for the whole story, and really it's maybe the theme for all of Jesus' ministry, right? He is life, after all, and new life will spring from him. He brings new life to dead situations. And so he heads south to Bethany, and he meets up with the first of the siblings, Martha. She comes out to him and greets him, and she says, "Lord, if you would have been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." And so I see in this reaction sort of a mixture of things, right? There's this sadness, the deep sense of sadness over her brother. There's also maybe some frustration in there about Jesus not being there. And also we see her faith. I know that God will give you what you ask. And Martha really believed that Jesus could do something about this hopeless situation. And then Jesus says, your brother will rise again. And Martha answered, I know he will rise again at the resurrection, at the last day. But then Jesus wanted her to realize something very important about his identity. And so he says these words in verse 25. He told her, I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live even after dying. Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this, Martha? We're going to come back to these incredible words later. They deserve a lot of attention. But Martha responds by saying, yes, I believe that you are the Messiah, that you're the Son of God. And then she leaves and goes and gets her sister Mary, and Mary comes running out to Jesus and says, Lord, same kind of thing Martha said. She says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And she's crying. And all the people who came with her are crying, and Jesus is looking at the situation, and he says, take me to the burial place, to the tomb. And by this time, it says that he's crying too. And so they go to the tomb, which is just a cave, really, with a rock rolled in front of it. And he says, take that stone away from the opening. And Martha says, that's not a good idea. He's been in there for 4 days. And the smell is just going to be horrible. And Jesus says, Martha, didn't I tell you that I am the resurrection and the life? And didn't I tell you that if you believe in me, that you will see the glory of God? And so they roll that stone away, and Jesus cries out in a loud voice. He says, Lazarus, come out. And then it says this in verse 44. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped in strips of linen and a cloth around his face. And Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. What an amazing story. Jesus proves that his words are true. He is the source of life. He is the one who can bring life to hopeless and dead situations. And this is big news, man. Like, everybody flips out. The Bible says that a whole bunch of people start believing in him. And then it says that the Pharisees, they flipped out too, but for a different reason. The short version is that they decide from this event that they've had enough of this Jesus guy. And they double down on their plans to kill him. And Jesus finds out about it, and then he sort of takes off with his disciples into the wilderness to sort of go into hiding at this point. And so, basically that's the story, the short version of it. But why did the Holy Spirit move John, the author of this book? Why is this story here before us today? What are we supposed to take away from it? What is the message? I don't think it's that Jesus just did another cool miracle, although that was quite a story. I don't think the message is that Jesus can raise someone from the dead. I think the main point that we're supposed to take away from this is what Jesus says here in verses 25 and 26, that Jesus is the source of life itself. Martha said, I know that I know that Lazarus will rise again one day in the future, but Jesus says, Martha, you're looking at the resurrection. I am the source of life itself. Life originates with me. What a claim to make. And I wonder if Martha got it really, and I wonder if we get it today. Do we really grasp the power of these words that Jesus spoke here? You know, we listed all those experiences before that can make us feel like we've really come into contact with the goodness of life, right? And there's more we could add to the list. And I think what Jesus is saying here is that we should not just kind of add him to the bottom of the list. It's not like, you know, all of these things about life are good and then Jesus is really good too. No, it's not that. Jesus is saying that everything good that you experience in life, it finds its source in him. He says, I am the life. I am the source of all of this. I am not only the creator of it all, but even if you get to the place in your life where it's all gone, where it just feels dead and hopeless, as dead as a dead man in a tomb for 4 days, I can still bring it back. I am the resurrection as well. I bring the dead back to life. On our canoe trip, we had to drink water, obviously. And so we brought some water with us, some bottles of water for the first day of paddling. That's the critical time, right? You need to have water to get through that first day. But then in the backcountry, when you're going into the backcountry, you obviously carry everything with you. You don't have a car, right? You're bringing it with you. And so you can't bring enough water for 4 people for 3 days. So you just bring enough water to get to camp, and then you switch over to filtering water from the lake. And so the day we paddled in, it was super hot. I was sweating a lot. And I had this little precious bottle of water for the whole day. And in that situation, you're always kind of playing mind games with yourself. You're looking at your water, you're sweating and hot and thirsty, and you're thinking, I got to ration myself here, right? I don't want to run out. But then when you get to camp, when you get to the lake, I mean, you've got unlimited water. Like, you can drink all the water you want, and not only can you drink all the water, but you can jump in there, cool off, swim around. You might even get some fish. Like, the water is an unlimited source of life, an unlimited source of enjoyment for you. And once I got to the lake, I mean, I never thought about running out of water again. I mean, there's no way I'm going to drink all that, right? And so you just start thinking instead, your mind shifts. You're just thinking about the beauty of what's in front of you. You're thinking about enjoying this abundant source of life that you have right before your eyes. And I think with Jesus, that's it, you know. With Jesus, with life, with salvation, it can be like that. Jesus said, anyone who believes in me will live even after dying. In other words, physical death may come, but if we're in Christ, real death, it will never come. In him, we find new life, and we continue to experience that new life forever, because we will never truly die. And he says that next. He says, everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never die. Will never, ever die. And so I have a question for you, and for myself as well. You know, what does life feel like for you right now? If you had to describe your life right now in terms of a vessel of water, would it be more like that single bottle that I had at the beginning of the lake, beginning of the trip to the lake? You know, or would it be more like the vast lake at the end? You know, if it's the bottle, if your experience of life is more like the bottle, you probably find yourself bombarded with a lot of anxious thoughts. You maybe feel like you're running out all the time. You maybe feel like you have to keep things safe. You might be wondering how long you're going to last. Or maybe you're in the situation where it's more like the lake. You know, you've realized that it's not so much about you. It's not so much about how much you can carry, but rather your focus is shifted from you to the one that you're connected with. It's not so much about how much life you personally have or how much you can hold on to, but it's about staying as close as possible to the source of life, which is, of course, Jesus. and enjoying him and sharing him with others. And I think that's what Jesus wanted the people in this story to see, because it helps us to make sense of some of the details of the story. Like, we'll go back here to verse 5. Jesus had a bit of a strange reaction to the news about Lazarus being sick. He decides to wait 2 days. Why didn't he just react in fear and run out and quickly help him before the life ran out of Lazarus? Well, I think if we understand what Jesus is saying here, we can see why, right? He wasn't afraid of Lazarus dying for the same reason that I didn't care about running out of water when I was sitting by the lake. You know, Jesus is the unlimited source of life. And how about in verse 7, his decision to travel back to Jerusalem? You know, the people there wanted to kill him. And his disciples thought he was crazy. They said, "Why would you go back to Jerusalem now? There's a whole group of people who want to take your life." But Jesus wasn't afraid to go, or he went anyway, even though he knew people were wanting to kill him. And I think it's important that we understand something about this, because I don't want us to come away thinking the wrong thing from this message. It's not as if Jesus was thinking himself invincible. And I hope you're not hearing that message today that, you know, somehow the takeaway for us is that we need to pretend that nothing bad is going to happen to us or that we're invincible. Turning to Jesus as your source for life doesn't mean that hardship is never going to come to your life. Neither does it mean that you should pretend that everything's okay and that there's no problems and that the things you're dealing with are just really no big deal and you're going to be fine because you have Jesus. I mean, I don't think that's the point. Because for Jesus, it was real. He cried real tears. He faced real death. And he did go to Jerusalem with real danger, and it did take his life, as we're going to see in the coming weeks of the sermon series. The message, I think, for us today is that despite all the difficulties we face in life, despite the risks and the challenges and death itself, we can face all of that without fear. Because no matter what happens, we know that we are connected to the unlimited source of life in Jesus Christ. We are in God's hands, and nothing, not even the sting of death itself, can take life away from us, the life that Jesus has for us. That's the claim that Jesus made. That's the claim that Jesus made, and then he backed it up by raising Lazarus from the dead to prove the truth of the words that he had to say. It's a message of hope for us, right? It's a message of hope for the future, that we will be with him forever. But it's also a message of courage to walk in the unknown today. It's a message of peace today in the middle of the storm. It's a message of abundance in times of need and want today. It's a message of life in the face of death today. This is the good news that Jesus has for us. This is the good news. The good news is that Jesus is life, and we can be connected to him. And so I want to spend the rest of our time just quickly looking at how the different people reacted to this message. And of course, we need to ask ourselves, how are we going to react today? And so let's start with the Pharisees. We always pick on the Pharisees. They show up again here. Sadly, they're playing a very familiar role again. You know, before them stands Jesus, the source of life and the promise of new life to all who would come to him. But instead of seeing Jesus as the good news that he is, the Pharisees treat him as a threat to their autonomy. In verse 47, it says that the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. "What are we accomplishing?" they asked. "Here is this man performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation." I think this story shows us again in striking detail just how powerful this human urge to maintain the status quo can be. And we shouldn't think that you and I today are immune to this idea. It's just it's a human thing. Jesus stands ready to give us unlimited life, But in order for that to happen, you and I must turn control of our lives over to Him. We can't have it both ways, right? We can't hold on to our life by our standards, living for our purposes and our goals, and then also say that we're living for Him. It doesn't work like that. And so when He wants to lead us out of our comfort zone, when He wants to change us, when He wants to stretch us, that's the time when we need to live in Him. He was calling the Pharisees out of their deeply entrenched traditions, their routines, and in some ways their religion. I mean, not the way of life that God had handed to them, but the things that they had sort of made up for themselves about their faith. They were so comfortable in that way of life, and they were so used to things the way they were, and they were so unwilling to change that they actually thought it was a better idea to murder the person who is challenging their status quo. And I wonder if we can do that today. Maybe not murder somebody, I hope, but try to just suppress or ignore or eliminate anything that might stretch us. Do we treat Jesus like a problem that we need to manage rather than a source of new life? A source that needs to be fully embraced? I think this can happen when we're unwilling to allow Him to change our priorities or change our plans or change our direction in life or to take control over us in some way. But the thing is, it's only when we do these things that we will experience the new life that He has for us. Jesus said, "Everyone who lives in me, everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never die. In Him we live. And if we live in Him, that means that we're finding our life in Him. The things of our life come from Him. We turn to Him for everything. How does that work in your prayer life? How does that work when you're faced with a difficult situation? Do you turn to Him? Do you find your life in Him? How about when it comes to your values and priorities? Do you adopt those things from Jesus, or do they come from somewhere else? What does your day look like? Where does Jesus fit into your daily life? If we are finding our life in Him, then our life needs to be in Him. This is where it's found. It's found in surrendering ourselves to the ocean of life that He has for us, instead of anxiously trying to hold on to, maybe that tiny vessel of life that we feel like we have control over. So how about the reaction of the siblings? Mary and Martha, they both had similar reactions. You can see they said these same words. You can see their trust in Jesus come through in the way that they speak to Him, but it's mixed, right? It's mixed with other things. We see questions in there. Maybe there's some frustrations in there. Maybe there's some doubt, and I think that might be where many of us are today. We might find ourselves in these situations. I know that I go through this a lot. We wonder why God has allowed some event in our lives to occur. We wonder why problems that are existing in us, in our lives or in the lives of people around us, why haven't they been cleared up yet? After all, isn't Jesus all-powerful? Couldn't He have prevented the death of Lazarus? Couldn't He prevent the problems that we face today? We know that many people in His time were frustrated by His decisions. He waited 2 days to go see Lazarus. That seemed weird. He traveled to Jerusalem, a place where people were trying to kill Him. That seemed weird. He wanted to open the tomb of a dead man. That seemed weird. And the people of His time, they thought that these things were bad ideas, and I wonder if we're still thinking the same way today. Do we still doubt Him today? Do we doubt His plans, His methods, His wisdom? I think this can easily happen when we've been praying about something for so long and we don't understand why things haven't changed. Or maybe when we're faced with a challenge in life and we just don't really get it. We don't know why this has to happen. Or maybe when, try as we might, we have this sinful habit that we're trying to break and It just keeps happening, and we're just sick of it. We might wonder in those times, does God really hear me? Does Jesus really know what he's doing? And I really love this story for that reason, because thankfully this is one of those stories where we actually get to see the end, right? We get to see it all come together. We get to see exactly why Jesus made all the choices that he made that maybe seemed so strange at the time to the people. And we get to see that he had a reason for all of it. And when Lazarus walks out of the tomb alive, it just all makes sense. And like the people in this story, there may be times when we don't understand God's plans either, and maybe sometimes we don't get to see the full picture. But if that's you today, and I know there are people here that's the situation that they're in today. If that's you, I hope you'll at least consider this question that Jesus asked Martha. When she questioned him, he said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" And I think that's it, If we find ourselves doubting today, the antidote, I think, is to remember and to hold on to the promises of Jesus. When things don't make sense in the moment, we can remember that his plans, like always, prevail. He is who he says he is. He is the source of life, and he has proved it in this story. And he is still the source of life for you and me today. If we trust him, if we believe in him, we too will see the glory of God. And finally, I want to look at the reaction of our friend Lazarus. Jesus commanded him a simple command: come out of the grave. Leave death behind and come to me. And there's so much you could say with that, right? Lazarus obeyed his words and walked out into a new life. And maybe today you need to sub out Lazarus' name here with your own name. What state of death is Jesus calling you out of today? Is a relationship falling apart in your life? Has sin gripped you and taken a hold of you in some way? Have you lost hope? Does it feel like your situation is dark and dead? And if that's you, I hope that you'll consider subbing your name out in another place as well. In verse 26, Jesus asked Martha, "Do you believe this? Do you believe this? Do I believe this? Do you believe that he is your source of life? Do you believe that everything truly good in your life is from him? Do you believe that he can give you new life for all eternity, even if it feels like all hope is dead right now?" You see, Jesus wants to bring real life to you forever. But so often we try to turn from him and turn away to other things to find life in those things instead. Maybe it's some of those things we listed earlier that we feel like when we're experiencing those things, we're connected to life. We have to make sure we don't get it backwards. Those things are a sign that Jesus is giving life to us, not the life itself. He is the true source. And any good things we experience in life come from him. And so we need to recognize and draw near to him because he is life. He is everything. Jesus is life, and life is only found in him. And so I hope today you can really see that for yourself. I hope you will turn to him today in the trials that you're facing right now. I hope that you've been convicted today to turn away from, maybe yourself as the source, or maybe something from the world as the source, and to turn to him instead. I hope you're filled with joy because you know that Jesus is your source of life. And I hope you're filled with joy because of that, and you're ready to share him with others, to share him freely and fully with those who need to know him as their source of life as well. Or maybe today you haven't come to Jesus yet. And if that's the case, today is the day where that can change forever. Are you ready to turn control of your life over to Him today and give yourself to Him completely, fully in faith and repentance and baptism? Are you ready to dive into the unlimited waters of eternal life? If you are, please feel free to come and find me. After this, I'll be down at the front here. Or you can also reach out to me or another Christian you trust anytime this week and come and find Jesus as your life. Thank you for your time today.